You're going to hear my voice in this video you're about to see because I've been with this from the beginning. But please understand this. This is everyone's story. It's the thousands of volunteers, it's all the employees, the staff who have come together to accomplish something that's really important to God. The real story of Convoy of Hope began when I was just a child.
One small step for man.
Introducing the Beatles again.
August 25th, 1969, my parents were on their way to a business meeting. Their car was hit head-on by a drunken driver, and my father was killed instantly, and my mother was seriously injured, and she'd been in the hospital for many months with broken bones, internal injuries. Bill and Levada Davis and their children, Steve and Terry, they lived in a single wide trailer, but they were willing to take us in. And ultimately, there were 10 of us that lived in a single wide trailer for about a year. I believe it was their kindness, their generosity that kept us 4 children from becoming bitter and angry. And we really owe them our lives. Those were tough days, living on food stamps, receiving welfare. I can tell you that when those bags of groceries would come to our door from neighbors and people in our church, it was like Christmas all over again. And us 4 kids, we would pile into those bags of groceries. It's that kindness that we receive that drives Convoy of Hope even today. I know what it's like as a 12-year-old boy to be wrestling with hope and to be asking God the hard questions. Why do I have to go to school without the nice clothes? Why is my cupboard bare? And I believe it's that spirit, those questions that we're answering through Convoy of Hope for a lot of people. They're being told they're not alone, they're not third-class citizens, that they matter. And it's because of that that people are finding hope and they're breaking out of the cycle of hopelessness. And that's really what Convoy of Hope is all about. It's giving hope, the same hope that was given to me when someone brought a bag of groceries to my door. There was a point in my life where I realized I was content, I was achieving my goals, but I wasn't happy. And it became very clear to me that I was telling people I was a follower of Christ, but I wasn't emulating Christ. Fast forward, I received an invitation to write a book for Mark and Huldah Bentane, famed missionaries in Calcutta, India. When I arrived, they told me that they had made an appointment for me to interview Mother Teresa. And in the course of that conversation, she just simply asked me, she said, "Young man, what are you doing to help the poor and the suffering?" And I figured I shouldn't lie to her. And I told her the truth. I said, "I'm really not doing much of anything." And she responded, "Everyone can do something." And those words were haunting to me, quite honestly. And I came back and I didn't know what to do, but I knew I had to do something. When you look at where Convoy of Hope is today, it's really hard to believe where we came from. When you are trying to figure out how you're going to pay your bills, you're questioning whether or not you can keep going because you're so discouraged. God made it happen because it's His heart. And we give Him the glory for what He's done. No one should assume credit, try to assume credit for this. There's only one that really deserves the credit and the glory, and it's God. And we've had the privilege of getting something done that's important to Him. You're going to hear my voice in this video you're about to see because I've been with this from the beginning. But please understand this. This is everyone's story. It's the thousands of volunteers, it's all the employees, the staff who have come together to accomplish something that's really important to God. The real story of Convoy of Hope began when I was just a child.
One small step for man.
Introducing the Beatles again.
August 25th, 1969, my parents were on their way to a business meeting. Their car was hit head-on by a drunken driver, and my father was killed instantly, and my mother was seriously injured, and she'd been in the hospital for many months with broken bones, internal injuries. Bill and Levada Davis and their children, Steve and Terry, they lived in a single wide trailer, but they were willing to take us in. And ultimately, there were 10 of us that lived in a single wide trailer for about a year. I believe it was their kindness, their generosity that kept us 4 children from becoming bitter and angry. And we really owe them our lives. Those were tough days, living on food stamps, receiving welfare. But I can tell you that when those bags of groceries would come to our door from neighbors and people in our church, it was like Christmas all over again. And us 4 kids, we would pile into those bags of groceries. It's that kindness that we receive that drives Convoy of Hope even today. I know what it's like as a 12-year-old boy to be wrestling with hope and to be asking God the hard questions. Why do I have to go to school without the nice clothes? Why is my cupboard bare? And I believe it's that spirit, those questions that we're answering through Convoy of Hope for a lot of people. They're being told they're not alone, they're not third-class citizens, that they matter. And it's because of that that people are finding hope and they're breaking out of the cycle of hopelessness. And that's really what Convoy of Hope is all about. It's giving hope, the same hope that was given to me when someone brought a bag of groceries to my door. There was a point in my life where I realized I was content, I was achieving my goals, but I wasn't happy. And it became very clear to me that I was telling people I was a follower of Christ, but I wasn't emulating Christ. Fast forward, I received an invitation to write a book for Mark and Huldah Bentane, famed missionaries in Calcutta, India. When I arrived, they told me that they had made an appointment for me to interview Mother Teresa. And in the course of that conversation, she just simply asked me, she said, "Young man, what are you doing to help the poor and the suffering?" And I figured I shouldn't lie to her. And I told her the truth. I said, "I'm really not doing much of anything." And she responded, "Everyone can do something." And those words were haunting to me, quite honestly. And I came back and I didn't know what to do, but I knew I had to do something. When you look at where Convoy of Hope is today, it's really hard to believe where we came from. When you are trying to figure out how you're going to pay your bills, you're questioning whether or not you can keep going because you're so discouraged. God made it happen because it's His heart. And we give Him the glory for what He's done. No one should assume credit, try to assume credit for this. There's only one that really deserves the credit and the glory, and it's God. And we've had the privilege of getting something done that's important to Him. You're going to hear my voice in this video you're about to see because I've been with this from the beginning. But please understand this. This is everyone's story. It's the thousands of volunteers. It's all the employees, the staff.
We're going to be reading from Psalm 105, verses 1 through 6. Psalm 105, verses 1 through 6. Titled, Tell of All His Wonderful Works. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, call upon his name, to make known his deeds among the people. Sing to him, sing praises to him, tell of all his wondrous works. Glory in his holy name. Let the hearts of those who seek the Lord rejoice. Seek the Lord and his strength. Seek his presence continually. Remember the wondrous works that he has done, his miracles and the judgments he uttered. O offspring of Abraham, his servant, children of Jacob, his chosen ones. Let's pray. Lord, God, our Creator, this is what we came here to do, what we just read, to call upon your name, to make known your deeds, to sing you praises, and to tell of your wondrous works. And may all the glory be to your name. So we thank you for this time together, Lord. Again, we pray that it honors you, glorifies your name. In Jesus' precious and holy name. Amen. Greet the saints.
We have a drummer.
Over all the earth you reign on high, every mountain stream, every sunset sky. But my one request, Lord, my only aim, is that you reign in me again. Lord, reign in me, reign in your power, over all my dreams, in my darkest hour. You are the Lord of all I am, so won't you reign in me again. Over every thought, over every word, may my life reflect the beauty of my Lord. You mean more to me than any earthly thing, so won't you reign in me again. Lord, reign in me, reign in your power, over all my dreams, in my darkest hour. You are the Lord of all I am, so won't you reign in me again. So won't you reign in me again. As morning dawns and evening fades, you inspire songs of praise that rise from earth to touch your heart and glorify your name. Your name is a strong and mighty tower. Your name is a shelter like no other. Your name, let the nations sing it louder, 'cause nothing has the power to save. strength to live for you and glorify your name. Your name is a strong and mighty tower. Your name is a shelter like no other. Your name, let the nations sing it louder, 'cause nothing has the power to save but your name. Should nothing of our efforts stand, no legacy survive, unless the Lord does raise the house, in vain its builders strive. To you who boast tomorrow's gain, tell me, what is your life? A mist it vanishes at dawn. All glory be to Christ. All glory be to Christ our King. All glory be to Christ. His rule and reign will ever sing. All glory be to Christ. His will be done, His kingdom come on earth as is above. Who is Himself our daily bread? Praise Him, the Lord of love. Let living water satisfy the thirsty without price. Come eat of Him, our living bread. All glory be to Christ. All glory be to Christ our King. All glory be to Christ. His rule and reign will ever sing. All glory be to Christ. When on the day the great I am, the faithful and the true, the Lamb who was for sinners slain is making all things new. Behold, our God shall live with us and be our steadfast light, and we shall heir His people be. All glory be to Christ. All glory be to Christ our King. All glory be to Christ. His rule and reign will ever sing. All glory be to Christ.
Father, thank you for giving us words to sing that express at least something of our hope, that we're a part of a family where all glory goes to you, all honor is due to you, and we're not on our own. We're not left to ourselves. We're not masters of our own universe. Lord, you are God. You alone are over all and through all and in all, and so we pray that our lives truly would mirror these lyrics, Lord, that our lives would be lived in every way for your glory. Paul even said, things as mundane as eating and drinking, may they be done for your glory. And Lord, this is a time of year where we try to especially be mindful of all the reasons we have to be thankful. I pray that as we're thinking through that even though it's okay to think of things like living where we live and having a home and maybe family or friends or pets or whatever the little things that just bring such joy to our hearts on a regular basis. I pray that more than any of those things, that our thoughts would be steered toward gratitude for the cross and for the empty tomb, that because of you, we have hope beyond this world and beyond death. And for that, we are eternally grateful, I hope. And so help us as we try to center our hearts this week around the theme of Thanksgiving. Lord, help it to be flowing just naturally and easily. And may it not be just this once per year, but throughout the year, Lord, may we be morning and night thanking you for the gift of life, the gift of hope, and the gift of grace and mercy, and just the gift of yourself to us. We're so grateful. I hope we live and show our gratitude by how we live. Lord, for those this morning that are sick, I know there's a tremendous amount of illness going around the community and the county, Lord, so would you just please have your hand upon those that aren't well, those that are home resting, maybe even those that are able to watch this service online from their beds or their couches. Lord, would you just touch them in a special way, even in this moment. Give them rest and refreshing, and however many days or weeks it takes to get back to a place of more normal health. Lord, I pray that they would find you present in that time and be able to use the downtime just to draw closer to you and to learn things more about your faithfulness and your character. And we do pray for their healing, Lord, if that would be your will, but we just pray that you would encourage those who need it and give rest to those who need it. Lord, for those that are recovering from surgeries recently this week, we are thankful that Shannon's went well, and others. Just pray your continued hand on their recoveries. Lord, for those preparing for that, I pray you'd calm their nerves. May their faith and trust be so strong in you that they aren't afraid, that they know you're with them. And would you guide the doctor's hands for those that are preparing for that? Lord, I know there are those whose hearts are breaking from recent loss and maybe even from loss some time ago. Would you, by your Spirit, continue to place your hand on those open wounds and bring healing as you see fit? Lord, would you give hope where there's darkness? Would you bring light? But even in the darkness, as we talked about at our men's breakfast yesterday, even in the darkness, you're teaching us things and you're bringing glory to yourself in a beautiful way, and you're showing us more of who we are. And so we thank you for the good and the bad, Lord, the times of trouble and adversity as well as the times of comfort and joy. And we know that you are good through it all, faithful through it all, and so we rejoice in that. Father, whatever heart this morning has come into this place and they're afraid, they're feeling condemned, they're feeling imprisoned in their soul, Lord, they're feeling empty. May this be the day that you have made that is the day for their life to spring up spiritually from your Spirit. I pray that you would open eyes to see and hearts to believe, and by your grace would you transform any heart that is still cold and dead spiritually. Thank you for the hope that we have in the gospel. I pray today as we look into your word and to a very tangible but sometimes sensitive topic, Lord, with material things and our tendency to pull those close instead of extend them outward. Would you just move upon us by your Spirit, I pray. And thank you for this church and the way you've caused them to flow in generosity for the work of your kingdom, and I pray that would continue. Lord, for any other needs that are unspoken, you see the burdens and cares of our hearts that are hanging around our necks like heavy weights. Would you just cut those free now? Would you bring freedom by your Spirit? Would you help us to trust you, take you up on your promises, and just be renewed in your presence this morning, we ask. In your powerful and precious name, we pray these things. And everyone said, Amen. You can be seated. Thank you very much. Well, good morning. Good to see you all. It's looking to be a good, exciting, full house down there for the Thanksgiving dinner. I don't know, maybe no one's going to show up for the third service, but last service was full. This service is pretty full, so thank you to everyone who's been cooking and baking, and we're excited to get together and eat together here in a little bit. This time of year, we have it seems like a growing list of announcements, and especially as we approach the Christmas season, I want to just preface this by saying, even though we have so much going on and so many things offered, the point isn't to further burden or stress your already busy schedules, especially around the holidays. The point of doing lots of different things and making them available is find something that fits in well with what you have going on that will actually be spiritually fruitful. whether it's the women's or youth or just the all-church Christmas party or any of these things. It's not a pressuring thing that, oh, you have to be involved in everything we do. It's a good time of year to celebrate, to be together, to fellowship, but we want to offer a few different options for helping you in that way, just to have fun and also to be worshipful this time of year. So bear that in mind as we go through all these announcements. But for today, it's a big day for us, as I've been telling you the last few weeks. The 20th, our Thanksgiving dinner is today, the all-church dinner. That'll be down at the Fremont Center right after this service. It should be open, if not right now, pretty soon. So you could head down there whenever you wanted. If you have food you want to get set out or whatever. For those that were part of the pie fundraiser, thank you again so much for your help and generosity. I trust most of you found out you could put those on the back table. If you didn't, if you have them in your car, feel free to just bring those in and put them on the back table. If you signed up to help bake pies for that and you forgot, you can still get them to us by tonight or early in the morning, and we can still make that happen. So thank you guys for your help with the pie fundraiser. And lastly, for today, our One Day to Feed the World offering is today. It's the only offering during the year that we take. There's this special box back there on the table. You can put your gift. If you're going to support Convoy, you can put it in that. If you put it in those regular boxes, that's fine too. It'll get to the same place, so don't worry about that. But if you want to make a checkout, you can address it to Cornerstone, but put One Day or Convoy in the memo line. Also, for anybody watching online or at home, we invite you, if you feel led, just to be a part of this ministry as well. You can go to the website, which is cccriverton.org, and there's a link there to support the church, and you can designate that, I think, toward Convoy or One Day as well. There's not a lot going on this week. No junior Bible quiz practice today, obviously, with all that we have going on. But tonight, the Truth Project study will be on schedule at 6 p.m. But then everything else is pretty much on hold this week, holiday week. So the ladies' Bible study is pretty much wrapped up. There's one thing to say about that here in a moment. But no youth group, no men's study. That's Thursday night, obviously. Happy Thanksgiving that day. But we do have the Sunday night study tonight at 6. So for the ladies, they've kind of concluded their study for the fall, but they do have one last video session. It's kind of a special session they're going to do. The video is going to be upstairs here, but they're going to eat first downstairs. So at 5:30, you can go down there. Any of you ladies, whether you're from the Tuesday or Wednesday group, and have a meal together and then come up here for the video. That's going to be on Wednesday the 30th, so take note of that. The new study will be just a continuation of the current one, and that's going to kick off Tuesday, Wednesday, January 10th and 11th. We get all that, Echo? All right. I was supposed to say that last week. Echo, as always, is so gracious with her pastor. But there we go. In place of Bunko this month, Alyssa has organized a ladies' Christmas open house. So it's going to be just a time of fellowship. There will be some Christmas crafts and lots of good food. So for any of you gals that want to just get an early start in the month on getting in the Christmas spirit, here's your chance. Bring an appetizer or dessert to share, but that'll be Saturday, not Friday night, but Saturday from 5:30 to 8:30. You're welcome to come and go as you please. So take note of that. All right, every year we pick one of the Sunday mornings in December, and we have kind of a special Christmassy service, I like to call it. So that's going to be on the 11th this year, which means for any of you that God has given gifts to, this is your chance to bless his body with those. We don't want to bury our talents in the ground and have them not be used. And obviously, talent was meant as a measure of money, but in our language, it means actual, gift or ability God has given you. It could be a reading you want to do, or a poem, or if you want to play an instrument or sing a song. We do suggest that you make it Christmas themed. We've had several times in years past where people say, yeah, I want to do a song, but I'm going to do this song that's more like an Easter one or something, and that's great. But I would say, well, let's save that one for after the New Year, and we're going to kind of do a Christmassy one, I think. But not trying to micromanage or anything, but that's going to be the 11th. It takes some time to get everything laid out as far as who's going, which service, and what time. And so if you could let me know by next Sunday, if at all possible, please be willing to be bold. And I know it's hard getting up in front of a crowd, and it's nerve-wracking, but God gives gifts to his people to bless and edify the body. So please be willing to do that. We'd love it. So that will be the 11th. Next Sunday, if you could let me know by next Sunday, that'd be great. Grief Share, we're appreciative of Greg and Kathleen offering that last week. It's going to be offered again that same Sunday, the 11th, from 1:30 to 3:30. And then since that day is our Christmas service, we're going to just make that the night of our all-church Christmas party. That's always a lot of fun. We go down to the fairgrounds, but not to the Fremont Center, not to the big building. We have our Christmas party in the smaller one across the parking lot, which is the Heritage Hall. And we'll be down there at 6, and it's a lot of fun. Just bring any kind of snack or finger food or dessert. No sign-up sheet. That's your Merry Christmas from me. we'll try to spare you those for just a few weeks here. But just bring anything, and we have our kind of Christmas Olympics, we call them. Lots of fun games you can participate in if you want. Some good prizes to win. Participation is not mandatory or compulsory, so don't be intimidated by that, and thus stay away. Last one, the youth group is going to have a Christmas party as well. That's going to be on Friday night, December 16th at 5:30 p.m. here at the church. And dinner will be provided for that, I believe. So all you teenagers, get ready to have some fun as well. We have more happening later in December, but I figured that was sufficient for today. We'll talk about Christmas Eve and Christmas Day next week. Birthdays this week. Kaylee, does Kaylee have a birthday today? Is she there? All right. Can you wave your hand? Oh, there's a little hand back there. That's Kaylee. All right. Happy birthday to you. Woo! Birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Kaylee. Happy birthday to you. All right. Good job, young lady. Also, Steve Lynn has a birthday today. So if he's watching online, happy birthday, brother Steve. We love you. Unless he's sitting here and I missed him. That'd be embarrassing. But tomorrow, little Vanessa Gale has a birthday. On the 22nd, Rob Olson. 23rd, Jade, looks like you have a birthday. So happy birthday to you. And on the 25th, Grace Smith and Jacob Hull. 26th, Gage Jordan. He's turning 10. Double digits. And Mike Connor, are you double digits too? We won't ask which double digits you are, but happy whatever your double digit birthday is this week. Also, our database says that it's their anniversary, but it's not. I found out last service. So who was our November anniversary we finally found? We finally found one. We looked for like 3 years. Who was it? Maybe it was the Conards, not the Connors. Yeah, we'll go with that. Well, we'll confirm that with you soon. Any other birthdays or anniversaries we missed for this week? Going once, going twice. All right. Well, any announcements that I forgot as well? Everything looking good? Okay. We have a different sermon today, believe it or not, in Proverbs. A tale of two poverties. Laziness and true poverty in Proverbs. Bit of a tongue twister there. We're going to take a little break from our sub-series, How Then Shall We Live? We'll probably get back to that in the new year, but today's message is a standalone message seeking to lay out what basically the entire book of Proverbs has to say about the issues of laziness and poverty, sluggardliness and being truly poor. We've touched on this a little bit in messages past in Proverbs, but today's treatment will be a fuller treatment, and it'll probably be the last time we talk about these issues in our greater series in Proverbs. So quite a bit to say, but quite a few verses to get through, but we're going to do it. So the first point for discussion is this, up here on the screen. Poverty resulting from laziness is not the kind of poverty God requires his people to minister to. Now, you can still choose to minister to that poverty if you'd like. We'll talk about this later. It's kind of a gray area sometimes, a conscience issue. But you need to know, scripturally, that that's not primarily the kind of poverty God has in mind when he commands his people to have hearts and eyes open to the poor. That there is a kind of poverty that results from sin, selfishness, and laziness that is not the kind God is primarily concerned with his people addressing. It might be helpful to think of it in these terms as far as a tale of two poverties is concerned. There is what you could call guilty poverty and what you could call innocent poverty. Now, we use the term innocent relatively. Obviously, we're all inwardly depraved and sinful before God, but we're talking from a human-to-human perspective here, and certain rights and innocence that God recognizes and defends. That's the category that this is in. And when we say guilty poverty and innocent poverty, that's what we mean. So it is incredibly important that we learn to distinguish between these two types of poverty, because the difference actually directly affects the nature of our moral accountability before God, which is a big deal, both as individual Christians and as a church corporately. The distinction between these kinds of poverties is what determines some of the priorities we have in ministry. So this is actually very important. we as a church body are morally culpable for how we spend the money God has entrusted to us, which it so happens he does command at least some of it be used to help certain types of people in true desperate need. It's important to him. It should be important to us. So being doctrinally precise here does matter. It directly affects the ministry of the church in very tangible ways. Therefore, we would be right to ask what exactly is meant by guilty poverty and innocent poverty. Before answering that question, I'd like to first mention what typically is meant by the word poverty in a general sense. A typical dictionary definition would read like this: poverty is the state or condition of having little or no money, goods, and I think this next word is the most critical, or means of support. The condition of being poor. The state or condition of having little or no money, goods, or means of support. Now, another important distinction to make here is this: that the fact of poverty is different from the reasons for that poverty. The fact of poverty should be distinguished from the reasons for poverty. Meaning, what do I mean by that? Two people could be in the exact same poverty looking from the outside. What I mean is, you can look at two separate individuals and the fact of their poverty is identical. That is, both of them have no money, no food, no house, no cars. So from the outside, the poverty looks the same. The fact of the poverty is identical. But the reasons for why those two people are in that situation can be starkly different. And those reasons matter to God and therefore matter to us. One of those two people whose poverty looks the same as the other might be a 6-year-old boy in India living in a cardboard box, no place to call home, no job to go earn money at, no family to cry to for help. The other person might have a poverty that looks very similar. On the street, no job, no money. And yet this other person might be an able-bodied, middle-aged American male who is just mad at the world, bitter toward God, enslaved to drugs or alcohol, and way too lazy to continue to show up for work and make money and pay bills. So even though the fact of the poverty might look the same, the reasons for it can be strikingly different. And I trust that point is now sufficiently made. The reason matters to God. We're going to talk about that a bit more, but first, another important point that I think needs made in this discussion is that we in the highly developed Western world sometimes don't understand what true poverty really even is. When you're working as many hours as you possibly can, living as frugally as possible, and yet each month you're still just further behind on your bills and you're closer to eviction and foreclosure, and you literally are doing everything you can and you're just getting deeper and deeper, then yes, that can rightly be called first world poverty. That's real, and that is experienced here in where we live in this country. However, if your claim of impoverishment is really just sullenness over not being able to afford the kind of house you prefer to have, or a brand new truck, or whatever, that's not actual poverty. If there are seasons in your life where you have to really cinch up the budget and cut out everything that's unnecessary and focus only on the essentials when you head to the grocery store, yeah, that can be a very trying time, but that's not actual poverty. If you have to sacrifice the toy you wanted or the trip you wanted to take, that's not actual poverty. True poverty typically means that you lack the means or the ability to care for yourself and also for those who are entrusted to your care that you're responsible for. You're doing everything conceivable that you could do, and you're getting further away from being okay and not closer to it. But if you just refuse to work full-time hours because you don't want to, or to work some overtime hours if your company even allows that, which not as many do, and you refuse that because, well, it's just too exhausting, or it's depressing, or I don't get as much me time as I want, or it puts a crimp in my lifestyle, then you're not living in actual poverty. If you're physically able to work and yet you have a dozen excuses for not working, you're not living in actual poverty. If you refuse to work because you have no car and you think that walking a mile is beneath you, that's not actual poverty. If you have a smartphone and internet and a big screen TV and Netflix and Amazon Prime, and then the very next moment you're crying huge tears to anyone who will show you sympathy, bemoaning the fact that your utility bill is almost 2 months behind now, that's not actual poverty. But to swing back the other way, I think sometimes it does need said because we can get calloused and ignorant. There is actual poverty where we live and in our country. What might it look like? Well, we have kids right outside our doors here who are neglected and abused and probably not getting the food they need that's essential to their health or medical care. They have parents who pretty much blow all the money they get every week or other week or month on gambling or more alcohol and drugs or on indulging their lust or whatever the case may be, and the kids are the ones who suffer and they lack proper nutrition and hygiene and medical care. These are legitimate and concerning and distressing needs. And to make matters worse, intervening in those types of situations is quite a difficult matter in itself. You can't just hear a rumor about some kids that are neglected and abused and are hungry and just, well, you heard it, and so you find out the address and you just show up at the door with groceries when you might be walking into a kind of situation you don't want to be in that puts you at risk of not coming home to your own family, and you don't know what's what or who's who. And it's a complex problem. Now, thankfully, there are many programs and there are authorities that are available and who will intervene in these highly sensitive situations when they're able or when they have sufficient grounds on which to move. But the fact is that suffering happens every day, even locally, and it matters, and it's serious. So I say that because I don't want you to think that this message is some calloused tirade suggesting that no one in America knows what real poverty even means. Only people in third world countries, orphan kids living on dusty African roads. That's not what we're suggesting. But on the other hand, I think it is safe to say this. There is significantly more innocent poverty in other countries, especially third world countries, than there is here in America. And when we say innocent poverty, what do we mean by that? We mean poverty that is not the direct result of sin and rebellion in the human heart, but rather is the result of circumstances that a person was put into or born into. There's a kind of poverty that is directly the result of human selfishness and sin and rebellion against God. And there's more of that, I believe, in our nation than in certain other nations in the world. Now, who really cares what Ian thinks? This isn't, let's come hear the word of Ian. This is going to connect to the Proverbs very soon. And I think you're going to see the reason I'm saying all that I'm saying is that God draws a distinction in his word about these different kinds of being poor or impoverished. So we are getting there. So hang with me. I don't want you to think, well, he must think he's really important. He's just giving his opinion today. Innocent poverty could look like this. It could look like a kid thrown out on the streets when he's a baby, which happens in other countries every day. And someone who has a little bit of compassion takes them in and at least feeds them for a couple years or a few until they're old enough they put them back out on the street on their own. Innocent poverty could be the family in some nation who's ruled by a horrifically evil despot who oppresses his people and rations out their food, and there's no opportunity for freedom or for self-employment, and they don't have enough. There are millions that have died even in the 20th century because rulers had cut off food supplies to certain areas that they wanted people to starve to death. That's certainly a kind of innocent poverty that we're referring to. Innocent poverty could refer to the millions of boys and girls who are kidnapped and sold into sex slavery, forced to become addicted to drugs, and then their precious little bodies ravaged by demonically controlled human beings. Innocent poverty is when a boy or a girl, especially in a third world country with underdeveloped health care, is born without hands or feet, or born without eyes or a tongue, or without the ability to hear, or with a severe mental handicap. And you say, hold on, that stuff happens here too. Yes, it does. But our nation, compared to others, has infinitely more resources to try to help you get plugged into some place or system or program to get you help, or you have a family that will actually care for you. In many nations, those people are discarded. They're left to fend for themselves. That's why over and over in Scripture, when you see the poor begging for help, what's the kind of poor that they are? They're lame, they're crippled, they're blind, they're mute. It's something beyond their control that prevents them from caring for themselves. So again, can innocent poverty occur in America? Yes, of course it can. It could look like a young mom whose husband left her for no acceptable reason, and she's working 3 jobs and 80 hours and barely keeping her sanity intact, dealing with all the housework, trying to deal with stacking up medical bills, living in a tiny little dump of a place that's got mold or leaking or some other kind of filth, and she literally cannot keep up. She needs help. It's beyond herself. Yes, that happens here. I'm not suggesting otherwise. There is legitimate, innocent poverty there. But we also have to be honest that those instances of poverty are more rare in America than in other countries. And to our shame, to our great shame, many of our political rulers have even begun championing sluggards and reprobates as victims to swing votes and to get funds. And I won't get into all that. I'll just make that one simple sentence. It's unjust and it's wicked, and eventually the piper will be paid in our country. So I hope you see now that there's this difference we're hopefully developing between guilty poverty and innocent poverty. Guilty poverty, it's not clean. It's not guiltless. It's dirty. It's the direct result of human selfishness and sin. And those people that run headlong into that, they don't typically care about repenting or changing either. They're committed in that course. And they want everyone else to feel sorry for them and to give them everything for free. And they're convinced that they deserve it. It's the parent who is always wanting some kind of handout, and yet they always have cigarettes or weed or beer or whatever. And the kids are going without essentials. Or it's the same person standing on the same corner for weeks after weeks after weeks asking for money when they are clearly young and well enough to work. Proverbs has things to say about that situation. Now, should we be calloused or spiteful toward such people ever? No, not ever. We can't be. We can't afford to be. That's not for us. An embittered heart, a calloused heart, that's not the right response. That's not what God asks for us. But I think it is okay to say, neither should we have so little backbone that we let those types of people manipulate our emotions to the degree that somehow all of a sudden now we feel like the bad person and they seem like the saint or the victim. God has much to say about this. There are those whose impoverishment is the result of their despising his commands, rebelling against his design for human flourishing. That's different from those born into situations they literally could not avoid and cannot help. So, we're going to get into the Proverbs now, but before I do, I want to say that's why we make a big deal sometimes about ministries like Convoy of Hope. That's why we care about them, because they are making it easy for us as the church to obey God in this way. They are literally going to the worst places on earth, to the least and the lesser. And not just handing something out for a day and leaving, but creating self-sustaining models that will last children through their childhood and save them from death or worse. And one last comment before we get to the Proverbs here. As far as those whose poverty is the guilty kind, you can still choose to be moved by compassion and to have grace and to help those needs if you'd like. God gives you that freedom. He gives it to me. There are times I have, there are times I haven't. And I'm always conflicted, every time. Because the battle that's going on in my mind is, okay, if I show compassion and if I help this person again or again or again, will this be the instance where they're moved by Christian love and charity and God uses that as a catalyst to produce change in their life? Could this be that time? And then on the other hand, you're thinking, am I just throwing more precious resource away that could be used in a much more holy way to just help continue to fund their sin? Is that what I'm doing? It's a kind of a sticky issue. And in some cases, you have to beg God for discernment and wisdom and the direction and leading of his Spirit. It's not an easy issue. Let's talk about guilty poverty in Proverbs. Proverbs 19:15. Slothfulness casts into a deep sleep, and an idle person will suffer hunger. How very interesting that God would point this out for us. Slothfulness will result in actual human suffering and hunger. Now, the problem we have in our country and in certain Christian denominations is they will take any person who is suffering or is hungry and they will exalt them on a pedestal as the one that we need to care about and meet the needs of, when God is saying that hunger and that suffering are because they despise me and because they're selfish and wicked. And this is what I have given to them in exchange. Does that mean you shouldn't help them? I don't know. I don't know. I don't always know the answer to that. What I do know is that in this verse we see that the suffering is very real and the hunger is very real. And yet it is a result of their despising God and his word, and they worship the God of self, not the God of life. And many times this person has health enough, and they have time enough, and they have opportunity enough to affect change in their situation, and they won't. It's like the bowl of opportunity is full and it's in front of them, but how do they interact with it? Look at what this verse says, Proverbs 19:24. The sluggard buries his hand in the dish and will not even bring it back to his mouth. What is God saying? Of course they're going to suffer. Of course they're going to be hungry. But why? What's the reason? If you'll give them the chance, what they'll share with you through many tears is, well, I'm just going through a really hard time in my life, or I just don't feel like working, or I just can't shake the funk that I've been in for months or years, and so I sit at home and I veg out, or I'm on my phone, or I watch TV, or I just sleep and I just sleep and I sleep and I sleep. What does Proverbs say? Proverbs 20 verse 13. Love not sleep. It's a hard verse for me because I love sleep. But what's he actually saying? Love it in a worshipful way, or a way that's your priority. It's your God. It's all you care about or want to do. I don't think it's saying that you can't value and hold dear to your heart a good night's rest. Love not sleep. Why? Lest you come to poverty. What kind of poverty is that? It's a guilty kind. Open your eyes. And what will happen? What does he mean by open your eyes? Like, wake up, shake out of it. This is your responsibility. Go to work. And guess what's going to happen if you do? There's bread on my table, enough to be filled and satisfied. Or people, they'll get your ear and your heart and they'll say, well, I'm poor because I just can't stop getting drunk or high or worse, other substances. I just can't stop gambling. I can't help it. I just can't stop indulging my lust. I'm sorry. I don't know what my problem is. I can't stop. I just can't stop. I just can't say no. You know what God's word would say to that person? Yes, you can. Well, no, you can. But with me, you can. Yeah, there's a real thing called slavery to the flesh that holds power over you. We see that in the Bible. But what else do we see? With God, what's possible? Would God, all things. Does God say, well, yeah, I can move mountains and I can speak universes into existence, but yeah, your addiction, sorry, that's a little bit too big of a mountain for me to climb, even as God, so you're on your own, buddy. No, with God, all things are possible. So if you keep repeating this line of, I just can't say no, I just can't stop, well, you might be right in a way. In yourself, no, maybe you can't. But who and what are available to you that you refuse to embrace or to see? Ultimately, what this comes down to is a battle of loves and pleasures within the heart. Who's really God in your life? What's your greatest desire? Proverbs 21:17. Look at this particular word. Whoever loves pleasure will be a poor man. Now, let's be clear. God created pleasure. He's a fan of it. in certain contexts and parameters. And I think it was C.S. Lewis that said, that our pleasures, it's not that they're too big for God, it's probably that they're too little. He is a God of pleasure. We're talking about man perverting and making that what he wants it to be and putting it ahead of God on the throne of his heart. Whoever loves pleasure will be a poor man. He who loves wine and oil will not be rich. Substitute whatever you want for oil and wine. Man, it could be 100 things in this day and age. What do we see? Sin and even poverty are ultimately oftentimes heart issues. It's a battle of desires. We must stop lying to ourselves when we say, but I really do love God. I do. I just really love this other thing, or sometimes I love it more. It doesn't work that way, God says. You can't serve two masters. You can't drive your car in forwards and reverse at the same time. You can't sing two separate melodies at the same time with your one voice. You can't speak two languages at the same time. I mean, unless you order an enchilada. That's the same in English and Spanish, I guess. But you know what I mean. Don't be so literal. Generally speaking, you know what I mean. Jesus said you can't serve two masters. You're either going to love the one and hate the other, or you'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. It's a battle of the love of the heart, and it's a devotion to which pleasure. In the Psalms, we read that the psalmist's greatest pleasure was to be in the presence in the house of God. In this case, we see that the ultimate pleasure is human indulgence, a feeling in the flesh. That's why we read the specific language we read. Proverbs 21:25. Look at this. The desire of the sluggard kills him. It's typically dangerous to read comments on the internet. I don't know if you realize that or not. Once in a while, I can't stop. I can't say no. That was a joke based on my last point, but too soon probably. But this is a very sensitive topic. When a person passes away in our community, that's a tragedy. But what's fascinating to me is you'll read some of the comments, and it's everybody else's fault, right? Often it's the church's fault. They say, why do we have all these churches in Riverton and people are dying in the street? It's like, well, maybe there was something we could do to reach out. Maybe we need to think about that and be humble before God. But why is it with the nature of mankind that we never ask the question, what prize was in this heart? What choice was made in this situation? And again, I realize this is highly controversial. I'm not trying to stir up unnecessary hornet's nests here, but I think Proverbs demands that we say something about this. We've gotten to this place as a culture of missing the way, missing the mark. Proverbs 24:30. I passed by the field of a sluggard, by the vineyard of a man lacking sense. And behold, it was all overgrown with thorns. The ground was covered with nettles, and its stone wall was broken down. Then I saw and considered it. I looked and received instruction. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. And poverty will come upon you like a robber, and want like an armed man. God is very intentional about personal human responsibility and the loves that exist in your heart and the choices that you make in your life. And then you got to love the imagery of this verse, Proverbs 26:14. As a door turns on its hinges, so does a sluggard on his bed. Just constantly back and forth. Never comfortable. The sluggard buries his hand in the dish. It wears him out to bring it back to his mouth. The sluggard is wiser in his own eyes than 7 men who can answer sensibly. What's fascinating about that last statement? The person in guilty poverty, there's always a story. It's always someone else's fault. They're always the victim or the innocent one. Isn't that what that verse is saying? He's wiser in his own eyes than 7 men who can answer sensibly, or women. Like, go ask any 7 sensible people and ask them, hey, what's the problem in my life? Why am I in this situation? Why is everything such a mess? And listen to what they have to say to you. It'll be life-giving. Instead, no, he knows. He's smarter. He doesn't want to hear what the 7 wise have to say. He just wants to spin a story. And it's so moving in his own heart that he buys it. He's so sinful that he's begun to believe his own lies. He's moved by his own speech, his own words. He hears himself speak and he wins himself over. It's a difficult situation, isn't it? Then when you encounter someone, you can't see their heart necessarily, so you don't know. Is this a person I should help? Or is this a person that my helping is hurting? I don't have the one-size-fits-all answer for you this morning. I'm sorry, but I know that there's a God who does and who cares enough about his people that I think if you're sincere in seeking out his direction, that he'll lead you, and I think he'll lead me. Because here's the deal. Jesus did give me all the riches of his kingdom when I was in spiritual poverty by my own choices. He did step into my life when I couldn't have deserved it less and made all the difference. And so I do need to keep my heart from being calloused or closed off when God might lead me to be used in someone's guilty poverty on some occasion. All right, enough said. Innocent poverty, what does the Proverbs say about that? This is what you could call clean poverty or true poverty. And here's the difference. The kind we've been talking about, you're not required by God to minister to that. He might lead you to. You might have to at some point. You might not. But when it comes to the innocent poverty, we are compelled and commanded by our God to have hearts that are open and that give and help. No question about it. Proverbs 24:11. What's the first word? Rescue those who are being taken away to death. Hold back those who are stumbling to the slaughter. This is a command. And oftentimes when it comes to immense poverty in other parts of the world, what's our response? Well, if I don't know about it, then I don't have to worry about it. Okay, someone else will. If I let my mind wander, there's probably people that are, thousands of them that are dying today because they didn't have food or basic medical care, but some organization or some community, they just drew the short straw. I don't know, but I'm going to worry about what I got to worry about today. I've got my list. What does God say? That doesn't excuse culpability. Claiming ignorance of the need doesn't exonerate us of meeting it. What does it say there in verse 12? If you say, behold, we did not know this, does not he who weighs the heart perceive it? We're accountable for sins of ignorance. The bad news about messages like this is we're doubly accountable when our sin is having known that the need is there, been told, been shown. So I'm sorry to say, and when I say sorry, I mean sorry but not sorry. Now that we've heard, we're accountable, even more so. We were always accountable, but now that we've heard, we're more accountable. God says in his word to us in James 4:17, if anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is sin for them. And so what does God command of his people? Proverbs 22 and 23. Do not rob the poor. You think, well, of course I'm not robbing them. They're poor. I would never do that. I'd never take what's theirs. No, that's not what God usually means by that. He means you're not helping them, and therefore you are robbing them. Do not rob the poor because he is poor, or crush the afflicted at the gate. Why? Because God cares a lot about the little guy, the least and the lost, and the destitute, and those put in a situation in this world that they had no control over. God's heart and his compassion are for them. Here's what will happen if we ignore this. For the Lord will plead their cause and rob of life those who rob them. I don't know about you, but that sounds kind of serious to me, and maybe we should treat this as such. This is a command. Don't do that. It's not optional for his people. Now, this is tricky because all of a sudden we're like, okay, well, I guess I have to give. But as soon as it becomes an obligation, we're missing the mark again. God wants our giving to be out of joy, out of cheerfulness, willingly, gladly, freely. That's the heart that he desires from his people. To give in freedom. Freedom is an interesting thing when it comes to this topic. He's given us freedom whether we want to obey or disobey him in this command. But how much freedom is it truly? It's limited, it's restricted, it's regulated by his sovereign decree that here's the outcome for your disobedience, here's the outcome for your obedience, and you can't escape that. So yeah, you're free to choose within these confines. Thankfully, mercifully, God loves us enough to warn us ahead of time what's going to happen depending on which way we go. what it will look like to obey with a glad heart, what it will look like to be calloused and to disobey. He warns us. Here's one of those warnings, Proverbs 19:17. I mean, it's amazing, isn't it, how often Proverbs addresses this issue? I hope you're seeing that this is really important to God. Whoever is generous to the poor, I think you could rightly say the innocent poor. Whoever is generous to the poor, what is that person actually doing? Lending to the Lord. And what will God do? He will repay him for his deed. That's God's promise. The simple fact is, if you have adequate money and material things, or if you have abundant money and material things, what has that given you? It has given you a measure of earthly comfort and ease. And that's not necessarily wrong. Like, God has given that to you in many cases. It could have been attained wrongly, possibly, but in many cases it's not inherently wrong. But if in your earthly comfort you close your eyes and your heart to those who are in incredible discomfort, then God warns, there will come a day when your own poverty will be great, emotional, spiritual, if not physical. And you will be in distress, and you will cry out, and you will desperately long for some heart to be open toward you in compassion. And guess what's going to happen? That will be stopped. No hand to help, no heart to care. Because God won't be mocked. We will reap what we sow. If we are generous, we will be treated generously. If we're stingy and calloused and closed off and always rationalizing why not to give instead of rationalizing why we really should give more, what does God warn us about? Proverbs 21:13. Whoever closes his ear to the cry of the poor will himself call out and not be answered. How fun does that sound? You eventually will cry out from your own heart or mouth, and you will not be answered. You'll be left alone, just as you ignored the call of those whom you could minister to. So we have to learn to see things aright. We have to learn to see value where value truly is. And the most valuable things are not monetary, Solomon says. Look what he says, Proverbs 28:6. It is better, it's more valuable to be a poor man who walks in integrity than a rich man who is crooked in his ways. So what's truly most valuable in this world? Proverbs 22:9. Whoever has a bountiful eye, that's just another way of saying is very generous, will be blessed, for he shares his bread with the poor. Do you see that this isn't optional for us if we're to be close to our God and to his heart? It's incumbent upon us. It's binding to care for those who literally cannot adequately care for themselves. It is our mission from God, one of them, which requires that we quit with our materialism and our selfishness and look for ways to help. So, as we try to conclude here, that's why we do things like One Day to Feed the World. In a way, it's like, I hope you see it this way. I don't say this as like a pat on the back for the leadership, but we're trying to make it easy for the church to be presented, as Paul said, holy and blameless before God in this area of worship. We don't want you to be left alone to figure this out and how God would ask you to like, we will help bring that here so that we can obey God in this way in a very reliable way, with very reliable people, with integrity. It's so beautiful when Paul says that of the church, that we're laboring to present you, the church, blameless before God. That's why we partner with ministries like this. Proverbs 28:27 says this, whoever gives to the poor will not want, but he who hides his eyes will get many a curse. Are you getting the sense yet that God really cares about this issue? Proverbs 29:7, a righteous man knows say that word if you don't mind. We struggle with that concept. The poor have rights, God says. Now, they're not entitled to forgiveness through the cross any more than any of us are. None of us could be worthy or deserve that. What he's talking about is on a human plane, on life on this earth. Those who are innocently poor have rights. What rights? The right to have a meal, to have another day, to have basic care. And how great that there are groups that go to the worst places and do this and also bring the gospel at the same time. It's wonderful. You know, I just read in the news of another $500,000 being given to some university to fund their transgender studies with the target audience of children eventually. You know, $500,000. And that happens all the time now. You know, think of the billions and the billions and the billions that are spent just to get a jar of gray dirt from a rock that's up above us in outer space. Like, yeah, that's kind of cool. But was it worth all the billions when there's millions of people dying of easily preventable causes? So all this suffering and malnutrition and death, all the world always wants to say, and you believe in a good God? Give me a break. If God was good, those kids would have food in their tummies. It's like, are you kidding me? God created an earth that can easily sustain the population we have, even at 8 billion. I mean, easily. It's just that humans are inherently depraved and selfish and wicked. I mean, think of the hundreds of billions and even trillions of dollars that get thrown at stuff, tax-funded stuff, and not given the easy answer to solve millions of people dying of starvation. It's crazy. This isn't on God. This is on us as a human race. I don't mean us as in Cornerstone Community Church. So what does God call us to do? He calls us to just do, to be active in this way. What does he say? Proverbs 31:9. Open your mouth. Judge righteously. Defend the rights of the poor and the needy. Don't have a hard heart. Realize what God requires of us, his people. Now, you don't have to give in the ways that we offer. You can find your own ways to obey God in this. I'm not suggesting that, but this is a good way. Proverbs 28:22. A stingy man hastens after wealth and does not know that poverty will come upon him. If not material, at the very least spiritual poverty, which is the worst kind. Now think of being on the receiving end of these ministries that we support, like Convoy. Think of living in that kind of environment where you're fighting just for a meal. We've watched some of these videos of moms and dads having to pick which of their kids get dinner that night. Imagine seeing these planes land or these trucks roll in or these ships arrive on shore. What must that feel like for a community that's delivered out of that? I think it's like this, Proverbs 25:25. Like cold water to a thirsty soul, so is good news from a far country. That's our job here today, is to send this message to those that we can. We can't reach everybody. We can reach some and say, hey, there's good news coming from a far country, and God has sent us. It's a beautiful thing. So I want to close. I want to show you this video this one's from the founder of this ministry, and he just shares a little bit of his personal story and how this all got its start. So here you go.
You're going to hear my voice in this video you're about to see because I've been with this from the beginning. But please understand this. This is everyone's story. It's the thousands of volunteers, it's all the employees, the staff who have come together to accomplish something that's really important to God. The real story of Convoy of Hope began when I was just a child.
One small step for man.
Introducing the Beatles again, Matt.
August 25th, 1969, my parents were on their way to a business meeting. Their car was hit head-on by a drunken driver, and my father was killed instantly. My mother was seriously injured, and she'd been in the hospital for many months with broken bones, internal injuries. Bill and Levada Davis and their children, Steve and Terry, they lived in a single wide trailer, but they were willing to take us in. And ultimately, there were 10 of us that lived in a single wide trailer for about a year. I believe it was their kindness, their generosity that kept us 4 children from becoming bitter and angry. And we really owe them our lives. Those were tough days, living on food stamps, receiving welfare. But I can tell you that when those bags of groceries would come to our door from neighbors and people in our church, it was like Christmas all over again. And us 4 kids, we would pile into those bags of groceries. It's that kindness that we receive that drives Convoy of Hope even today. I know what it's like as a 12-year-old boy to be wrestling with hope and to be asking God the hard questions. Why do I have to go to school without the nice clothes? Well, it was my cupboard bearer. And I believe it's that spirit, those questions that we're answering through Convoy of Hope for a lot of people. They're being told they're not alone, they're not third-class citizens, that they matter. And it's because of that that people are finding hope and they're breaking out of the cycle of hopelessness. And that's really what Convoy of Hope is all about. It's giving hope, the same hope that was given to me when someone brought a bag of groceries to my door. There was a point in my life where I realized I was content, I was achieving my goals, but I wasn't happy. And it became very clear to me that I was telling people I was a follower of Christ, but I wasn't emulating Christ. Fast forward, I received an invitation to write a book for Mark and Huldah Bentane, famed missionaries in Calcutta, India. When I arrived, they told me that they had made an appointment for me to interview Mother Teresa. And in the course of that conversation, she just simply asked me, she said, "Young man, what are you doing to help the poor and the suffering?" And I figured I shouldn't lie to her. And I told her the truth. I said, "I'm really not doing much of anything." And she responded, "Everyone can do something." And those words were haunting to me, quite honestly. And I came back and I didn't know what to do, but I knew I had to do something. When you look at where Convoy of Hope is today, it's really hard to believe where we came from. When you are trying to figure out how you're going to pay your bills, you're questioning whether or not you can keep going because you're so discouraged. God made it happen because it's His heart. And we give Him the glory for what He's done. No one should assume credit, try to assume credit for this. There's only one that really deserves the credit and the glory, and it's God. And we've had the privilege of getting something done that's important to Him.
There you go. I'm going to have a couple helpers come up here and join me. Thought we'd close with a song today, and then hope to see you down at the dinner. But don't forget that convoy box is on the back table. Last thing I want to say before we dismiss here, or sing this song and dismiss, is why do we give? You know, sadly, in a lot of cases, it's probably self-motivated. We want to feel good about ourselves, like we did good deeds and we helped others. Sometimes we give because we feel guilty if we don't. Like, well, God said I have to, so I need to. But really, biblically, there's only one reason to give, and that's the gospel. We give because He gave to us. He changed us by His kindness in our poverty, our spiritual brokenness and sin. And so it's our delight, hopefully, as His Spirit brings us to new life, to then be that way toward others, which is ultimately His command, is to treat others as I've treated you. So this song, I thought, gave voice to that in a lovely way. So thanks to these guys for being willing to help me with that, and we'll close with this.
You pulled me from darkness and clothed me in garments of praise. Jesus, forever my song will be you. I'm living in freedom. You've taken my burdens away. Jesus, forever my song will be you, only for you. For the cross that you bore and the debt that you paid, for the victory you won over death and the grave. sing for the hope that you give and the joy that you bring, for the promise that heaven is waiting for me. This is the reason I sing. I will not be silent. I'll testify of your grace. Jesus, forever my song will be you, only for you, for the cross that you bore and the debt that you paid, for the victory you won over death and the grave. This is the reason I sing, for the hope that you give and the joy that you bring, for the promise that heaven is waiting for me. This is the reason I sing. Oh, you're so good, so good, you're so good to me. Forever I'll sing, you're so good to me. Oh, you're so good, so good, you're so good to me. Forever I'll sing, you're so good to me. For the cross that you bore and the debt that you paid, for the victory you won over death and the grave. This is the reason I sing, for the hope that you give and the joy that you bring, for the promise that heaven is waiting for me. This is the reason I sing. Oh, oh, oh. This is the reason I sing. Oh, oh, oh. This is the reason I sing. It's the reason we sing, and hopefully the reason we give as well. So God bless you guys, and we hope to see you down at the Fremont Center for our Thanksgiving dinner. Be blessed. We'll see you soon.
You're going to hear my voice in this video you're about to see because I've been with this from the beginning. But please understand this. This is everyone's story. It's the thousands of volunteers, it's all the employees, the staff who have come together to accomplish something that's really important to God. The real story of Convoy of Hope began when I was just a child.
One small step for man.
Introducing the Beatles again, Mac.
August 25th, 1969, my parents were on their way to a business meeting. Their car was hit head-on by a drunken driver, and my father was killed instantly, and my mother was seriously injured, and she'd been in the hospital for many months with broken bones, internal injuries. Bill and Levada Davis and their children, Steve and Terry, they lived in a single wide trailer, but they were willing to take us in. And ultimately, there were 10 of us that lived in a single wide trailer for about a year. I believe it was their kindness, their generosity that kept us 4 children from becoming bitter and angry. And we really owe them our lives. Those were tough days, living on food stamps, receiving welfare. I can tell you that when those bags of groceries would come to our door from neighbors and people in our church, it was like Christmas all over again. And us 4 kids, we would pile into those bags of groceries. It's that kindness that we receive that drives Convoy of Hope even today. I know what it's like as a 12-year-old boy to be wrestling with hope and to be asking God the hard questions. Why do I have to go to school without the nice clothes? Why is my cupboard bare? And I believe it's that spirit, those questions that we're answering through Convoy of Hope for a lot of people. They're being told they're not alone, they're not third-class citizens, that they matter. And it's because of that people are finding hope and they're breaking out of the cycle of hopelessness. And that's really what Convoy of Hope is all about. It's giving hope, the same hope that was given to me when someone brought a bag of groceries to my door. There was a point in my life where I realized I was content, I was achieving my goals, but I wasn't happy. And it became very clear to me that I was telling people I was a follower of Christ, but I wasn't emulating Christ. Fast forward, I received an invitation to write a book for Mark and Huldah Bentane, famed missionaries in Calcutta, India. When I arrived, they told me that they had made an appointment for me to interview Mother Teresa. And in the course of that conversation, she just simply asked me, she said, "Young man, what are you doing to help the poor and the suffering?" And I figured I shouldn't lie to her. And I told her the truth. I said, "I'm really not doing much of anything." And she responded, "Everyone can do something." And those words were haunting to me, quite honestly. And I came back and I didn't know what to do, but I knew I had to do something. When you look at where Convoy of Hope is today, it's really hard to believe where we came from. When you are trying to figure out how you're going to pay your bills, you're questioning whether or not you can keep going because you're so discouraged. God made it happen because it's His heart. And we give Him the glory for what He's done. No one should assume credit, try to assume credit for this. There's only one that really deserves the credit and the glory, and it's God. And we've had the privilege of getting something done that's important to Him.